Over the last couple of years, it's become more and more apparent that being certain is one of the worst things you can be in this life. I know that's a bold statement, but let's get into it. Here are 3 quick reasons why I think that being certain is one of the worst things you can be. Certainty discourages creativity. Certainty keeps your mind closed and limits your vision. Number 2, certainty limits growth and learning. When we're certain, we have no reason to seek out new information and experiences, which limits our potential knowledge and skills. And lastly, certainty encourages elitism. When we know something and we're certain about it, there's no reason to consider other perspectives and the ideas of other people, thus elevating you to a subjectively higher status. I've been meaning to record this video for so long, but this topic means so much to me because I think it's so important. And so I've put so much pressure on myself to make this video what I want it to be, but that pressure has made it almost impossible to have the day and the time necessary to make it what I want it to be. And so I'm just pushing through today, making this as good as it can be, but it just happened to be so windy, and so I found one spot where it's not as loud, where the wind isn't as bad, so that I can record this without it being so loud on the microphone. So a lot of my talking is going to be right here, and I don't like that because it's just kind of like a narrative, but you know, it is what it is. We got to get this thing out. So why is certainty the worst? Let's look at some of the worst things that people do, and behind those actions is the firm, certain belief that they are right. And that feeling that they are right drives the pride and the elitism for them to discriminate and to treat other people in the worst possible way. So certainty may have some benefits like confidence and other things like that, but here's my argument. Not only do I think that certainty is not super beneficial, but I also don't think that certainty is even really possible. So let's just jump into it. This idea that certainty is not really possible, it's nothing new. This question has been around and discussed and debated by philosophers for centuries. And some argue that knowledge is possible, while others believe that it is not. The experts that argue that it is possible to actually know something will admit that while the knowledge is possible, it's limited. Take a look back at all the epistemological methods that we talked about in that video. Is there a single method or combination of methods that you can use reliably every time that will get you to 100% certainty? I would argue, along with a lot of the philosophers, that you can have a high degree of confidence that you're right, but certainty will never reach 100%. But the problem is that as humans, we crave certainty. Evolutionarily, I think it makes sense. An indecisive hunter was rarely successful. There are times where we need to know something and we need to know it now so that we can make those split-second decisions that could be life-saving. And also, certainty just makes us feel safe. The feeling of knowing how things were, how they are, and how they will be makes us feel really good inside. Makes us feel secure. And it helps us keep the chaos of reality at bay, but it usually comes at a cost. And I would argue that cost is delusion. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, oh, this only applies to, feelings, but this also applies to science. And Dr. Jacob Bronowski, he was a philosopher and scientist and mathematician, and he explained that we need to approach our scientific knowledge with humility, because as he put it, and this is a quote from him, human knowledge is personal and responsible, an unending adventure on the edge of uncertainty. And I just love that. I think certainty is an unending adventure, meaning we're never gonna get there. And that unending search is what drives is what provides a place for progress, if that makes sense. Okay, please don't fall. The philosopher Karl Popper also had something to say along the same lines. He said that science is the search for truth, not the search for certainty. And I think there's a very valuable difference behind that. And he was talking about the idol of certainty when he said the following quote. He said, "The wrong view of science betrays itself in the craving to be right. For it is not his possession of the knowledge of irrefutable truth that makes the man of science, but his persistent and recklessly critical quest for the truth. On the side of religion and certainty, one of my favorite authors of all time, Richard Rohr, he's a Franciscan priest, he said, "The major heresy of the Western churches is they have largely turned the very meaning of faith into its exact opposite. True faith involves not knowing and not even needing to know, but we have made faith demanding to know and insisting that we do know." The major heresy of Western Christianity is the need to know. And I just love that. In order to clear the air of any doubt of how I feel about certainty, certainty is the exact opposite of what you should be. Certainty is the enemy of progress. It stalls learning. It stops growth. Certainty is the death of reason. It's the death of critical thought. The only thing constant in this life is change, and the only thing certain in this life is uncertainty. Now, I say all this with a caveat, because I do believe that you can have opinions and strong opinions, but you need to hold those opinions loosely so that you are still open to progress, you're still open to new ideas. Because if you'll remember the one thing at the end of the epistemology video, and that is epistemic humility, that we, looking at the way that we arrive at knowledge, is always going to be imperfect and it's going to have flaws. And so I'm going to end this video with a paradox that the only thing that I'm certain of is uncertainty and the value of it. If you thought this was interesting and helpful and thought-provoking, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment because I'd love to know your thoughts on this.